pleasure to be here today and launching our child safety initiative with these amazing professionals. We've been working hard in the past months to, bring this to reality. And I would like to ask Kavya to introduce herself, and then Tamas and Cathy before we start. Yeah.
Thank you, Maria, and welcome everybody to the XR Safety Awareness Week. And today is the Child Safety Day. So I'm so honored to assemble here with my colleagues. Some of them are my really good friends. We have worked closely on various occasions, and it's such an honor to represent today the Child Safety Day during the XR Safety Awareness Week. I'm Kavya Pearlman. People sometimes refer to me as Cyber Guardian, and I take that duty too seriously sometimes. In the past, I have managed to handle 2 virtual economies for Linen Lab, which is has the oldest existing virtual world, Second Life. And prior to that, I have also worked for Facebook, doing some third-party security work. And at the moment, XRSI, that is organizing this event, I'm the founder and CEO of XRSI, and I'm just really thrilled to be able to give back to the community. The goal, the reason why we are assembled here is 2020 is the year when we would the industry and most of the people would be purchasing a lot of these headsets, especially because of the price value. And in general, there is a sense of adoption of virtual reality type technologies because of pandemic and other catalyzing factors. And that's why this is just simply to create this reflection point and be able to, reflect on the idea as to what do we need to proactively be aware of as we adopt these technologies. So thank you, Maria. I'm so glad to be with you all.
Yes. Tamas and...
Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm Tamas Henning, and I'm the Trust and Safety Advisor at XRSI. Have been working with Kavya since the very, very beginning of XRSI, and I primarily focus, as I mentioned, on trust and safety issues, but part of that on child safety issues as well. My background has been with Facebook, has been with Roblox. I'm currently working at Novi, focusing a lot on securing the financial data as well. Have been in the industry for over 15 years. I know that makes me feel super old right now. And as part of the other things that I do is I really work with the gaming community to get a sense within the gaming community itself of how safety can be brought in and how young kids can really understand how to be a good digital civilian and what are the type of content that is good versus what is bad, what is the type of things that they should be really aware of versus what not. That's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Tamas. Cathy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Cathy Hackl. I am a futurist. I'm also an author, and I do a lot of different things. I've been in the XR space for about 5 years now. I've worked with HTC Vive as a VR evangelist, then with Magic Leap, worked with them for about 2 years. And yeah, I've been very lucky to have a lot of amazing experiences. I'm also a mom of 3 children under the age of 10. So this topic is obviously near and dear to my heart. And the future I want to see enabled for them. I am very lucky, I consider myself, to be living in Washington, D.C. at this time when AR and VR are still relatively new technologies in the public policy side. So I'm really interested in focusing on the intersection of XR communications and public policy and where we're going. So definitely, stay tuned for that. I probably will be sharing more about that in the future, but definitely interested in finding out how we can educate more people on Capitol Hill and in government about AR and VR.
Yeah, awesome. So Rodrigo just told me that I forgot to introduce myself. I was so crazy with the comments here. So hi everyone, my name is Maria Oliveira Tamellini. I'm part of the Child Safety Initiative with Kavya, I think almost since the beginning of XRSI as well. I am co-founder and COO of GamerSafer, And our goal is to scale online safety and fair play to millions of players working with the games they love. And I'm also a mom of 3 kids. 2 of them are tech-savvy gamers. So all this conversation is also really close to my heart, and I am like deeply honored and passionate about the discussions we are having today. So I'll start with Cathy because she has to leave in about 20 minutes, I guess. And because you're also close to the discussion as a mom, I think, I'm super excited to hear your thoughts. So, Cathy, can you please share a little bit more about your engagement with child safety in XR Awards, your thoughts and first impressions?
Yeah, it's something that I definitely think a lot through with my children as I see them engaging further and further in the concept and the idea of the metaverse, right? So obviously that is beyond, that's gaming, that's AR, VR. The metaverse is going to encompass many different types of, of virtual worlds. So one thing that to me was really important was back in the summer, I asked my children, I know what it is, but and I know it well, but I wanted to know their perspective. And I said, guys, what's Roblox? And they, they turned to me and they said, oh, mommy, it's a community. They didn't say it was a video game. They said it's a community where we meet our friends to play games. And that to me, as a futurist, was a big signal of how they view, gaming as kind of almost the next social network, or the social network where they meet their friends, especially during the pandemic. So that got me thinking through a lot of different things related to the metaverse and to children. I even this weekend, I shared a quote. I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but I said the world's next Coco Chanel is probably going to be a 10-year-old girl that's designing avatar skins in Roblox. That's what I really think. Yeah. So I really think that's where the future is heading. And obviously with the children doing these in these spaces, and I've gotten great feedback on the quote. And I wholeheartedly believe that. Like, I'm not just saying it, I wholeheartedly believe it. And I think with children playing in these spaces, I've also seen things that are negative, related to how they're treated, or things that they might encounter in the metaverse that are just not, that are, some cyberbullying here and there, some, they also play Among Us as well quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting to kind of watch the interaction with total random people. So I try to have safety precautions on most of the games, but there's always, in certain games, there's always random people or randos. Yeah. So yeah, some of that reporting and blocking. When it comes to VR and AR, my littlest one doesn't really do much of that because she's very young. But the oldest ones, I'll allow them to do Beat Saber, play certain games. The first experience for both of them was Henry. I'm not sure if any of you guys here watched Henry, which won an Emmy. Beautiful experience that I thought was perfect for children. They loved it. They still think about, talk about Henry. So I've had them try that, and that was a very positive experience. With Magic Leap, when I used to work there, the headset's not really allowed to be used under 13. When I did, when I did leave Magic Leap, I did allow them to try some of the underwater experiences, and they thought that was really interesting and very beautiful. It was nice to see their expression and see them try the technology. So I see the good. This is how I frame it. When it comes to being a futurist, I am not a dystopian futurist. A lot of people tend to be very dystopian about the future. And I'm not a utopian either. I know it's not popcorn and unicorns, right? Yeah. I'm what you call protopian, where I understand that the reality is going to be somewhere in the middle. We're going to use technology to progress, but there will still be challenges and there will still be some negatives. But I do believe that technology is going to enable us to have a better future, while not utopian or dystopian.
Yeah, I think, and that's a great to start. And connecting to my next questions, as you were mentioning, children's lives are being shaped by the interactions they have with digital service and devices. And as a futurist, I think you are one of the best persons to share what are the benefits of AR and VR for children and families. What do you highlight?
So I highlight a few things. I think one of the greatest things that this technology allows is for accessibility, especially for children with certain types of disabilities. I think it's going to allow them to interact. If they don't have a limb, it doesn't matter. They're in a VR space. they can be whoever they want to be. They can be a purple dragon, right? If they want to be. So I think it's very beneficial in that sense. And it's going to allow people with disabilities, not only children, to have access to jobs and opportunities that they never had access to. So I think that's very powerful. I also think through the idea of access to education, and if that can be solved, I would love to see more use of these technologies to, to have more children in developing countries and all around the world, even here in the US, and in areas where they might not have access to the best teachers or might not have teachers because many of them might be leaving the workforce. I always joke around, but wouldn't it be great if you could put on a headset and learn chemistry from Marie Curie or learn physics from Albert Einstein, right?
Yeah.
I think that idea of democratizing access to the best teachers in the world seems to be a great fit for how I envision education potentially in the future.
Yeah, awesome. So for those that are watching us, you can ask questions. Just raise your hand, and there is this space in the right corner of the stage where you can come and make questions. Welcome to the new friends that are joining us as well. So Tamas, do you like to add anything on top of the benefits?
Yeah, so from my point of view, I completely agree that, hey, like we are looking at the next generation of teens that are and kids that are right now growing up in this particular world of AR and VR, and the mindset that they're in is totally different than the mindset that any one of us is in right now. And I think it's absolutely obvious that, yes, the next Coco Chanel is already playing Roblox and what other AR, VR environmental community game. But it's not only Coco Chanel, the next Coco Chanel. It's also going to be your next hacker, your next amazing entrepreneur. Is going to be potentially the person who finds the next biggest cure for whatever, or whatnot. Like I'm really excited about the level of innovation and the next generation of what ideas can be surfacing from these young minds. I'm just excited for that particular future.
Yeah, it's amazing, the potential. And when I am having challenge sometimes with technology, I usually invite my 22 years old and my 14 years old daughter to support me. So sometimes they're more prepared than myself to deal with those challenges. So talking a little more about, we discussed about the positive side of those words, but what are the biggest challenges and risks for children? How can we protect them in XR worlds?
Is that for me?
Yeah, it can be for you because because you are leaving soon, right, Cathy?
Oh,
okay. No, Tamas, I think you have a lot more to add there from your experience, though.
Okay,
take it.
So, it honestly, from the very, very beginning, I would want to make sure that kids can actually differentiate between what's real and versus what's not real. Like, it is virtual reality, and it is virtual for a specific reason. And we need to make sure that it is abundantly clear where virtual world starts and ends versus reality begins and ends. For example, kids not being able to distinguish between physical potential issues and health problems that may occur in real world or hurt that they might be putting themselves to is going to be very, very important. So being able to delineate between that is going to be very important. And the other big thing is that I think we need to do a lot more research on is also going to be around like the psychological impact of this, the data impact of this, what the biometric information and how that data can actually be used across both monetization and non-monetization areas is going to be important. But then going into things like grooming, bullying, all of these things, making sure that we can foster a safe environment is going to be absolutely key. Cathy, what are your thoughts?
You just reminded me of something that I tell my kids, and they don't know why I tell them this, but I always say, don't talk to that random person in Roblox because they could be a 50-year-old man in their basement. And they're like, Mom, why is everyone a 50-year-old man? But, I'm always very realistic with them. I'm like, don't share any information. And if anyone comes to you and says that they're going to kidnap your family or like hurt us, it's not true. I'm very open with them without necessarily, sharing some of the horrible realities, but I make it, mindful. I'm like, don't talk to that random person. So I think that there are positives and there are negatives. There's a world of wonderful possibilities, right? I want to think about the wonderful possibilities, but I also think about the negatives. And I think about, maybe some, in my case, some terms or things that they have been told or they have heard in Roblox or in Among Us that I'm like, wow, I was not ready for you to have heard that term, or they'll come and ask for, Mommy, what does this mean? And I'm like, wow, so it's always a back and forth. Sometimes I'll like restrict chat and I'll take chat off for a little bit just to kind of allow them just not to have that kind of, those kinds of relationships. But yeah, it's weird because I do look at the studies and I look at things and I'm like, I grew up in a time where parents thought gaming is bad, right? Gaming has no future. But nowadays, I'm like, gaming's not bad. I mean, there's studies that show, I believe, that gamers become better surgeons because they're more agile at certain things.
Yeah.
There's obviously a huge future in the virtual economies. So it's kind of, I think, a balance, right? It's a balance as to how much time. Obviously, they're spending a lot more time playing games now and in virtual worlds, but there's always, we always make sure that they have a balance. It's interesting. I mean, I'm all for also allowing them to create. So, having access to being able to Roblox Studio and start creating things and potentially sell them. I think it's exciting, and they know it. Like they'll tell me, Mommy, like I want to be able to do this and sell stuff. And, they have friends that sell things and make lots of Robux. I always use the analogy, and I used this in one of my articles that I called, I said, is direct to avatar the next direct to consumer? And I said, when I was growing up, my brother's friends were all saving up their allowances to buy Air Jordans, right? That was the big thing. Now my son, for his first communion, we said, what do you want for your first communion? And he said, well, Mommy, all I want are Roblox gift cards that I can turn into Robux, which is the digital currency inside the game, to buy my favorite gamer skins. So I said, okay, this is a whole economy. It's the virtual economy, but I specifically call it the direct to avatar economy. And I think that that's going to be really interesting. And once again, that's where my concept of the next Coco Chanel. But I agree, the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next, next Dr. Fauci or whoever, right? Is going to be probably a gamer right now.
Yeah, and from an economy point of view, Roblox, the biggest creators on Roblox are actually making over $1 million a year on the platform itself. So you can already see some of this entrepreneurship coming out of Roblox. And I'm actually really like this whole direct to avatar marketing, I think is going to be a reality sooner than later.
Yeah, and I think the idea of, starting this conversation and promoting the good things and managing, the risks and challenge is at the core of XRSI. And that's why we're here today. Kavya, I don't know if you have anything to add before moving forward, but I would like to leave a few words for you.
Can I add something very quickly?
Yes, please.
From the child safety perspective, I also thinking and this just came to my head is, the idea of the safeguards that were put in place for child actors, because parents were kind of taking all their money. And I wonder if eventually we're going to need some type of safety net or safeguards for children that are very successful in these virtual economies. Right, so they're not exploited, or they're not, or everything, all their gains are not taken away. So this just literally came to me. I thought of what's that young boy? He was Gary Coleman. Well, yeah, he was. He had a lot of safeguards came after everything that happened to him. But just wanted to add that could be an interesting perspective.
That is a remarkable point, Cathy. And that's exactly why we have these conversations at XRSI. The very points that were made in the earlier panel about, parental controls, those were also highlighted just about a few months ago by Lawrence Wagner. And as far as I'm aware, Facebook reality team is actively working on some of the parental controls that needs to be in place. So this is exactly why, at what point that you just brought, I'm going to go ahead and explore this further, because you're onto something. We definitely do need a specific set of controls that must go into place. One thing I do want to say is that sometimes, and I don't know if I should blame you, Tamas, because, I don't know if anybody knows, I used to work with Tamas, and part of our job at Facebook was, most of our job was to look at the bad of the technology from various different angles. And some of the tricks of assessing risks accurately, I actually learned from Tamas. He was my boss back at Facebook. And so I don't know, I want to blame you to create a little bit of a dystopic feeling in me, because I always find the negative. And then a good thing is I surround myself with people such as Maria and Cathy yourself. Meeting you at AWA was awesome. And, just keeping up with the positivity, such as Sonia Hoskin. She's such a great, positive person. So I feel like the balance is in the middle. And that's why this sort of an interdisciplinary committee and a initiative is really what we need, where we are looking at this challenge from various different angles that, Cathy's talking about, futurist point of view, but not just dystopic. My point of view sometimes tend to be a bit gloomy, but then we have Sonia Hoskin, who is a huge enthusiast and advocate for, safety and child safety. So I'm really excited for that it allows me this opportunity to look at technology from both angles. And I think at the moment, we're literally at the crossroads where we are going to really start adopting this massively. 2020 is that catalyzing event. Then there was the Facebook launching, Quest 2. That was another catalyzing factor. And then we have this sort of a sense of this, the second pandemic, like feeling isolated, feeling alone. Kids need to be schooled. So all of this is built up to this breaking point of mass adoption of VR and eventually AR. And that's why I'm really concerned, but also excited, because we have all these enthusiasts, all these risk assessor, all the people looking at these technologies to try to create that balance and pragmatism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I think we have a few slides to share. I don't know if we're going to share right now or later on, Kavya.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I believe Cathy has left us because she had to be somewhere right at this time. But yeah, I really, why don't you, Maria, since the lead of Child Safety Initiative, both you and Tamas have worked heavily on this. Tim, if you could move to the next slide. I would like you, Maria, to do the honor to announce this formally.
Yes. So we're super excited to announce that we are launching the Child Safety Initiative. It's part of XRSI. There is a group of people working hard to make this happen. The goal of a Child Safety Initiative is to build safe, inclusive worlds for children. And we're doing that by defining standards, pushing adoption by the industry, expanding awareness, supporting regulations, and promoting research and innovation. So besides myself, Tim Stifler, which is here in the back, Tim, Tamas, Kavya, and Lawrence, that is not here today, but is also just joined this effort to contribute. And as the first thing we thought is, how can we bring this language? How can we bring this discussion to children? And we are launching today this icon and mascot to support us in this discussion. And the idea is spreading awareness regarding child safety in the language that children speak, sharing this with teachers, educators, and also with parents. I don't know if Kavya, Tamas, and team wants to add, because this is team effort, and I want to give them space to share as well.
Well, I actually want to point to Tamas and ask Tamas, is like, Tamas, this is something that sort of evolved. In fact, at the very beginning, kind of was your brainchild. And then we all started to assemble around the idea. And then first we started to put these things in under Cyber XR Coalition, which was a diversity and inclusion initiative by XRSI. But then this seemed important enough that we needed to branch out and really focus on that. Why this? Like, why child safety initiative that we need to do at this point?
So again, it goes back to that overall idea of like, look, at the end of the day, the youth today utilizes technology and information. The way they process is very, very different than from an adult. We as adults more utilize technology and systems and tools a lot of the times as it is really, really prescribed. But truly kids, the young generation is the one that pushes a lot of the tech that we utilize to its edges, right? So take a look at how Snapchat evolved, take a look at how Facebook evolved, take a look at how Twitter evolved, and how these different tool sets have actually been used very, very differently by youth. Take a look at Roblox as well, with its own virtual economy, where there are kids right now trying to figure out how can they themselves make more Robux, not for illegal purposes, but just so they can actually get their next skin that they really, really want to use. So if we have this really awesome world where we are fostering the mind of the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next innovator that will help with healthcare, then why not try to foster it in such a way that it is truly a safe environment for them to develop and have a safe environment where they can truly let innovation and the creativity run free. So looking at it, you're going to see very, very quickly that you're going to run into different age groups and different set of different problems for each individual age group. You're going to have the sub 9-year-old age group that consumes and learns like basically a sponge. Then the 9 to 12 to 13-year-old who's now already starting to really develop their own personality. And then the young adult who's going to be the rebel, who's going to try to actually break a lot of the things and start to be a lot more of the individual. A lot of current AR, VR, or at least when we started this, and Kavya, you know this really well, was mainly aimed at adults. It wasn't aimed at young kids. So how do we bring, and the reason why it wasn't aimed at kids is because this is a very difficult problem. Like in current regulation under COPA, under all of these things, doing this right in the current regulatory framework is really difficult. So in allowing regulations to evolve, parents to really know what is safe versus what is not safe is not an easy task. And when we sat down to discuss this, I was like, no, we should definitely tackle this problem because it's a very, very important problem. And if we don't tackle it from the very beginning, it's going to be like, okay, cool, this world is only isolated for adults. And that is not an inclusive world that we want to be in, but rather let it be a super inclusive, something that can help kids from a very, very young age to be part of society today.
Yeah. And then, Maria, you guys, Rodrigo was there on the earlier panel, made several brilliant points. And then one thing that for the sake of audience, you guys over there at GamerSafer and safety being like a common word there. And for us, XR Safety Initiative, this is such a beautiful marriage. And immediately I recognize the importance of technologies you're building at GamerSafer. How is it different than traditionally what we've done about child safety?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference we're trying to bring with GamerSafer is thinking before the fact. A lot of technologies are trying to, identify risks and harms that are taking place inside platforms and intervene. And GamerSafer, we came to help gaming companies mostly to verify and authenticate players before they join a match or a game. And with that, we are providing, more security and also more information or more compatibility so they can put players to play together in a way, that's not only improves their experience, but also secures their experience. So we are verifying and authenticate them before they join a match or a game. That's the core. And I think that is pretty much aligned with the work we have done in the standards. So I don't know if you know, but XRSI has published the immersive technology standards for child safety, for child privacy and safety a few months ago. And one of the things that we brought in this framework is the core value of prevention. Of course, those technologies that are in-game doing the work of, trying to detect and intervene, they are important, but also we want to show that thinking prevention is important. And this is also aligned with innovation, right? Because innovation fosters, how can we deliver the best technologies to bring the best impact for society? So I think these are the things that we try to bring with those standards as well. So Kavya, I want to let you share a little bit the importance of this framework for the XR ecosystem.
Yeah, and that is something that, I learned from you guys, and that's what attracted me to partner with GamerSafer immediately, is a lot of the people put this burden, something that I've learned working with you guys, is that people try to put the burden on parents. It's like, oh, parents should do this, parents should do that. And then Tamas and Maria, you guys have literally let's sort of lay down the baseline of what should be the potential, balance. Is not all parents, it's not all technology. Neither technology can solve all our problems, nor parents can solve all of the safety issues and prevent kids. And that's why this sort of a exploration of how to find that balance for each and every use case, because it's obviously going to differ when we're talking about, let's say, create. I talk about these three pillars, but recently I've added a fourth pillar. So create, when we are creating these new worlds, like, kids creating some new instances and developing new things or developing new experiences. Connect, where we have this element of social VR or social XR. And then finally, the commerce piece. And earlier, Cathy made a remarkable point, and I'm really keen to even explore that further as to potentially we may even need to develop specific type of controls for children doing commerce in XR. And I'm so happy that she literally was not holding back, because that I think is going straight to our standards. And that's what's been happening, that these brilliant minds come together. I'm simply just taking notes. Even a phone call sometimes with Tamas has resulted into oh, wow, this is something that we need to put into our standards. And that's how it's all sort of come together. But what really happened with those standards, we put the standards out in May. And then we worked on this privacy framework, XRSI privacy framework version 1.1. Never before has there ever been a privacy or a safety standard that encompasses harassment, bullying, and kids' safety. So there is a specific section, thanks to both of you, dedicated to children's safety in that framework. And I'm really honored and delighted that now this framework is being discussed at the congressional level. We're talking about some of the IRBs to be, announced fairly soon from both sides of the aisles. And then we're going to put that framework into focus and develop it further. So this is just really what humanity deserves. We deserve our children to be protected, and we deserve this kind of a proactive measures to be taken. And it's just an honor to be here and find myself in the midst of it and find you guys to do this thing.
Amazing. Before I forget, we're launching the infographic for children, as I mentioned, and also the top 7 tips for parents. Everything parents need to know about VR. So I want to ask Tamas, because he was mentioning, the power of, these words for children. What is the role that awareness and engagement play in children's safety? What are the recommendations you can give for parents that are considering VR devices for their children?
I think awareness is 80% of getting to the end goal. And Kavya, as you mentioned, just the approach that, hey, like, no, this is the parents' problem. No, it's not. It's everybody's problem.
Yeah.
So it's as much the parents' education to make sure that the parents themselves are educated about what are the issues, what are the threats, what are the patterns. But also companies are, in my mind, absolutely responsible for sharing that information with the parent so the parent can easily digest all of this fun stuff. So, and by the way, do we have the infographic up on slides? It would be actually awesome if we can bring it up. But in my mind, there's a lot of things going on around what parents should really know about. And in my mind, where it all starts is for the parents to actually understand what the world itself is. It needs to start from very much the understanding of the game itself. So that is the number one thing that I always ask anyone who comes to me and asks me for advice is, have you sat down with your kids and actually played the game? Do you understand the game itself, no matter how easy or dumb or whatever the game may be? Have you actually sat down with your kid to actually understand it and truly sit down and understand the game itself?
And this is a great advice because I think 2 weeks ago, FOSI launched a report about parental controls. So they made this research asking parents what they think about parental controls. And the answer was basically that parents are overwhelmed with so many parental controls and, features they have to manage. So the piece that we bring in our infographic is basically helping parents to understand the dynamics instead of, activating features or going to each one of the platforms, because if they understand the overall dynamics, they can intervene and support their kids in a much better way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tamas,
just throwing controls at people. Nope.
Right. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I don't know if we have the slide. I know, Tim, we have the privacy framework slide.
Oh, okay.
Infographic slide here.
Okay. Yes, the privacy. So this was the privacy framework that Kavya was just mentioning.
That's right. Yeah, within this framework, there is a dedicated section. So when it has 4 focus areas, 14 functions, one of those 14 functions is child safety. And that is to be taken pretty seriously. When you say 14 functions, one of them is child safety, that means majority of these things are pretty serious, such as like data protection impact assessment, like things that must be implemented at a global, congressional, regulatory level. So we are not leaving our children behind as we move fast and adopt these technologies. We're all banding together to try to figure out where the balance lies. About the infographic, Tamas, have you seen the infographic? Because it's actually available on the website now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have it up. I just wanted to bring it up to see if everybody could take a look at it. But yeah, like if
it's
not, it's definitely up on our website. And if we want, we can actually talk through some of the high level tips.
I think it's important to highlight a few of the tips. So one of the first thing we suggest in the document is to follow age restrictions. So there hasn't been much research done yet on how virtual reality affects kids physically and mentally. So we kindly suggest parents to be wise about how long their children stay in VR and to respect the manufacturer recommendations. One of the most important recommendations, and that applies not only for VR but also for online platforms, multiplayer games in general, is about the social aspect of it. So as you know, children are meeting, playing, and sharing experience with people online without necessarily meeting them in real life. And that possibility, open doors for unwanted and inappropriate contact. So I think one of the recommendations we give is like having the conversation about how those interactions works and making sure that the door is open for your children to ask about when they see something that is not appropriate, or even before adding someone in their friends list. So I think that's the one of the the most important recommendations. Tamas,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, and I can continue with some of the more high level ones, and definitely the parental engagement is absolutely important. Like, and this goes back to what I mentioned previously as well. As it is so important for the parent to actually sit down and understand the game, and be there as your child is actually playing with the game, and for you as well to understand the mechanics of the game, so you can have these honest conversations around the do's and the don'ts, but whether you should be interacting with others or not. Now, the other thing that I would want to definitely call out is the online purchases. Like, we talked a little bit about Roblox and Robux, about what is possible or versus what is not possible. But this is, for example, where I would want to call up the friendly fraud concept, where kids have actually ran into a situation where they racked up over $10,000 in credit card debt for their parents, which is really, really hard for the parent to get out of, right? Because of microtransactions, because of in-game purchasing being so easy. So as a parent should be very, very mindful of the fact that, hey, really understand the monetization strategy of the game, and whether there's a little bit more of an aggressive microtransaction system in the game that really easily allows the kids to buy something, because it's easy to press the top up button if there's no limit on it, because it's just going to work, right? So keeping a very, very close eye on this economy system is going to be important. Even in the world where the kids themselves can generate their own revenue, it is going to be important to understand like how the revenue is generated, keeping a close eye on it, make sure that you do have that honest discussion, especially if you have a teen, of the pros and cons of money at the end of the day.
Yeah. And we always go back to parental engagement, because once parents know there are a lot of possibilities in terms of purchase, they need to go back to their children and talk about that. So parental engagement is definitely something that's, integrated with all recommendations.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the last one, because you also brought up the parental controls. But I would definitely want to talk a little bit about choose content wisely. Especially with younger kids, it's going to be very, very important to make sure that all of the content, all of the games that kids are allowed to play is actually appropriate for their development stage and where they are. And it is truly a game you want them to play. And I'm going to say something controversial. Yes, it may be a game that is not recommended for their age group. But if you're going to be doing that, that is absolutely okay. But be mindful that you've actually had that conversation with your child about, look, this game may not be as appropriate, and talk about it. It is okay to have open and honest conversations instead of just shrugging it under the rug and just saying, no, you're not allowed to play that game.
Yeah, and I think the combination of content and maturity, and also the sensation of experiencing things that VR brings, can escalate, the effect.
Yes.
So I think content gets even more important when we're talking about VR.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like both of you have shared all about, like, a lot about the inboard. And earlier, I was listening to the panel earlier for the child safety panel earlier. Louisa Spring, she has a 10-year-old daughter, and she's so worried. And that's why, Tamas, that is a controversial point that you just made. Because then I want to bring in Louisa Spring's point. She has a 10-year-old daughter. And even though this is age-appropriate content, Louisa is really worried about the capture of the data. And that's another significant difference between just the normal, traditional gaming environment to, while now we are fully embodied in this world, sometimes even full body tracking. And if that is allowed, then where do we go with this? Where does the privacy stand? And how do we even manage that for children? Is it different? Is it not? Like, I think those answers really, for me, I feel like I'm a facilitator in most cases. I really look to you guys for these type of answers specifically focused on child safety.
I think the privacy question, as it relates to to child data and biometric data and all the data that is collected through an AR or VR device, I don't think we fully comprehend the consequences of what all of this data can be misused for. Because I by the way, purposely use the terminology misused. A lot of the data can be used for, I think, really, really great possibilities of understanding and actually driving richer and more better experiences that can actually help learn and further future that next Mark Zuckerberg. But then I got to ask the question of like, okay, cool, but what if this data can actually be misused either by a hacker or a thief or someone who's trying to cause bodily harm, or in other circumstances, how can this data potentially be misused for ad targeting, right? So for example, if I have a headset on that can do a full room scan, how is it prevented that that data doesn't go and recognize the fact that, hey, I have a Samsung TV, so maybe Sony wants to sell me Sony TV ads further popping up. So it's going to be really important for the data, as the data is getting processed, for the data itself to be processed as much locally as possible, and for there to be very transparent understanding of what is actually leaving the device on the bit level and how that data is going to be used is going to be really, really, really important.
True. One of our participants is raising his hands. So if you want to make a question, you need to go to the left side of the stage. Yes, Team is assisting him. Yay.
So, when it comes to stuff, when you say like people are finding data and stuff and are able to basically harm other people, I don't think I've ever like heard of that happening, honestly, when it comes to like news and stuff or events. Like I've never heard of like some guy tracking down some random kid and just harming them.
So that's a very, very good point. These type of attacks are fairly novel and niche attacks, and honestly require fairly high level of sophistication, because you have to imagine that a lot of these devices, like the Oculus, like the HTC Vive, all of those are actually coming out of fairly responsible companies that really know how to secure the device itself, and data is just not leaving willy-nilly left anywhere else. But it is a known attack type where you could potentially introduce keyframes that do fairly disturbing subconscious trickery on your mind, and this has been proven already. That has been done, for example, on YouTube, where there's a frame or two cut in that actually kind of sends you a message that you don't really want to hear or see, that can be quite disturbing. Now, amplify that with the possibility of a rogue device or a second-hand device that you bought on Craigslist or somewhere that purposely has a malware installed on it for whatever purpose beyond harm. These devices right now, again, are niche. They're not they're mass consumer devices, but not with the level of penetration, for example, as a phone. But imagine a world where everybody has one. It becomes a target. These attacks immediately become real. And if we don't start talking about these attacks now and start preventing them now, later is going to be a lot more difficult than than when it becomes mainstream.
Yeah. I
Well,
think
I heard you mentioning about like flashing pictures or whatever, kind of like a hypnosis kind of thing or whatever, but I don't think that's ever worked really, unless the person is like forced to watch it. I mean, if a kid saw like flashing images of gore and all kinds of other stuff, then they'd probably take it off and like not want to play it, or they probably want to get it fixed.
If I may jump in,
go ahead.
Tamas, earlier Rodrigo said something really remarkable. He said the real dangers for children are not going to be the obvious ones. So what Tamas is probably referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, is dark patterns sometimes that are embedded into these worlds. They have been embedded into our apps, and now they are actually coming to this world. Some of the work that we are taking on the roadmap is related to these dark patterns where you just embed things. The second point I just want to make quickly is this data set, whatever body tracking, all this data that you collect, it is eventually going to end up with some, it can be maybe sold to an insurance company. And, we know by research that just typing some of the typing on the keyboard can infer whether you're going to have a stroke in X amount of days or not. Like these type of inferences, Tamas, you were the first person I remember you pointed out in 2018-19 when we were meeting about inferences. So the point is that that's a really good question that you bring up. Most of us don't think about this, and it's not obvious, but it is that underlying, and that's why XRSI is conducting these researches, so we could find that actual answer and make people aware of it, that this is the stuff that we're dealing with.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think just to add on top of what Kavya was saying, XRSI is a nonprofit organization, so as part of his mission is prevention. So how we can think before things happen and protect, families, children, everybody. So it's at the core. And I think as a society, it's important to have, those different organizations, each one balancing the kind of, use of the technology and sharing with the society in a way that everybody can join the conversation and ask questions just like you did in events like this. We have another participant wanting to make a question.
Okay, my question is there something coming to make people more aware of, in VR, who's sort of a student in the area? Because I know that with COVID, a lot of teachers are turning to this sort of online realities to sort of see, hey, my kid's actually in class and paying attention, and they're actually interacting. Like, I know that a lot of teachers are using that with their PCs, not with the Oculus and stuff, but just with the PCs at the moment. And it's sort of concerning for me going, is this the environment I really want those kids in? And I've been having discussions with the high schools going, is this really safe for the students to do? And that's what I'm sort of here listening to.
She's breaking for me. I don't know for you.
I can hear the question. I think you raise a very, very valid point that, hey, like, look, in the COVID world, teachers have been trying different techniques in education, and so far they've been primarily using Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever method they could to actually bring into a 2D world with the kids themselves. But how do we approach the problem where parents would want to take that and not necessarily do a Zoom call, but why not have a class-like environment like we would have here in Altspace, where the kids in VR could actually participate and learn together? And how do you then identify that, hey, like, this is a classroom, and don't bother this particular space as is particularly being built out? I feel that there's a lot of opportunity here to actually put out a lot of education-specific guidance around what are the best practices if you want to set up a classroom environment within AR or VR worlds, and what would we as XRSI recommend as best practices in setting up such a world. And I know Tim would definitely be this was something that you'd be very, very excited about, but I think there's opportunity here to do that.
Awesome. So as we are wrapping up, I would like to highlight that this is just the beginning of a long and important conversation. But before you go, Kavya and Tamas, what message would you like to leave for those that are watching us?
Continue having fun, and don't be afraid to try out new things.
Just second that, Tamas, is that have fun. That I would say, and I've been recommended by a lot of my friends to have fun because I get too serious sometimes, but have fun. And one thing I want to mention is do not despair. And this is why these wonderful advocates, and it is just my honor to be able to be part of this. And we are here. We love these challenges. We are actively solving the very problems that you talked about, babe, is the, educational perspective, awareness. And this is why this sense of urgency to create this awareness week to talk about child safety. So don't despair. Together, we will solve these challenges, and together we will go into these brave new worlds with awareness and with safety.
Yes, and join us. Check the website, make questions, follow us on social media, add us on LinkedIn, keep doing the good work, and hope to see you in the next panel.
Yep. And thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.